Welcome to the National Indian Gaming Association's The New Normal, Native American Women in Gaming, Empowerment Through Unity. My name is Ashley Cope, and I'm the Marketing Manager for the Indian Gaming Trade Show and Convention. I would like to share a few housekeeping tips before we get started. Everyone is muted by default except for our speakers. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question or chat box and they will be brought up at the end. This session will also be recorded and available on our website. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Victor Rocha, Conference Chairman of the National Indian Gaming Association.
Thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate all you've been through this morning. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Rocha. I am your host for The New Normal. My co-host is Jason Giles, and welcome to The New Normal. Today, first of all, I guess I should say that, we had a little issue in the very beginning, little technical issues, but hopefully we're working through them and you guys are here. But this is in my opinion, one of the a very important session. And this idea came from when we were at G2. One of the sessions we put together was a session, and Maxine and Stephanie Poston were and Sheila, and we also had Chairwoman Erica Pinto. At G2, we had this session talking about these issues, about empowerment, and it ended up being just this really powerful conversation. And probably before I go, I should probably introduce my guest. As usual, I went off again, but it was just this very important and powerful conversation that I feel that we needed to share, and that the people in the industry need to talk about these issues. We can't bury them. And I think the empowerment of women and women in gaming. I think in Indian country, it feels like we're making a lot of progress, but when I listen to the women in the industry, I realize that we still have a long way to go. So I'd like to welcome my guest. First of all, the first time on our show, we have CEO of the Laguna Development Corporation, Maxine Velasquez. How are you doing, Max?
I'm great, Victor. Nice to see you all. Nice to be here today.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate having you. And then also we have my dear, dear, dear friend, Sheila Moraga, the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Indian Game Association, and just an amazing human being. Sheila, how are you doing?
Good, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good. I miss you. It's good to see you. We saw each other in Vegas. Sheila, this was a very powerful conversation. Why does it seem like sometimes, like I said, it feels like we're making progress, and maybe because I'm working with all these amazing women all the time. And then when I hear these conversations, it just feels like we have so far to go.
I think it's because, honestly, we talked about this in Vegas. It's because we have come a long way. I mean, given, my many years in gaming, women in gaming were an anomaly. And now in some areas, it is a matter of course. So we've got women CEOs, directors, and in Indian country, I think it's more prevalent than other areas. But when we listen to women coming up in the ranks, I think because we kind of got complacent a little bit, because everybody was like, wow, look at all these people we have, all these really strong women. And then when I was listening to a lot of women at G2E, especially one person who was from my tribe, sat down and had a conversation with her and realized that she still felt like she did not belong where she was. She just became the CIO over at Gila River, and she still felt like, she didn't belong there, which I found it very unsettling to me that someone I'd known for that long still had those feelings. And she was conveying with me what other women that she works with felt like. And so we have come a long way, but we still have so much more to do. And I think that, if we shine a light on it, maybe we can come to recognize that our work isn't done yet.
I guess it's so weird for me because, my inspirations have always been people like you, Sheila, you know what I mean? And so for me, it's like the way, I'm inspired by people who they're women. You know what I mean? So it's not a gender thing. It's more of an intellect thing for me. People like you and Val and all these amazing women in the industry, and Holly, and so I see a lot of powerful women there, but I just, when you do hear the younger women, you do this. Max, first of all, welcome again. Tell us a little about yourself before we jump right in already, about your current position, tribal affiliation, years in gaming, horoscope. We want to know everything about you, Max.
Thanks, Victor. Hi, everyone. Maxine Velasquez here. I'm the president and CEO of Laguna Development Corporation out in New Mexico. I'm from the Pueblo of Laguna, and I've been in gaming for over 22 years. I'm a licensed attorney still. And I was practicing law for over 21 years in New Mexico, helped negotiate 3 gaming compacts in New Mexico, and then switched over and switched careers to the president CEO of our corporation. We have 3 casinos in New Mexico. We have some commercial gaming out in Kentucky with a racetrack. We have over 22 food and beverage establishments in our organization. We have grocery stores, travel centers. We have the famous Laguna burger. If you've never been to New Mexico, you have to come and get our Laguna burger.
Wow.
I have 14 executive staff that are under me, and I have about at full capacity. On a good day, we have 1,500 employees. So I've been in gaming for over 22 years, representing tribes, negotiating compacts, and it's been an interesting journey. On the first day of going out into law and practicing with a law firm, my boss, my partner, she took me out to a gaming compact negotiation back in 1999. That was my first day of work, and I've been in gaming ever since. And it was interesting. In '99, I was young. I was 29 or so, fresh out of law school, and you sit around the table, and my boss, Kate Stetson from Stetson Law Offices, was the only woman in there, and had been the only woman in there for a very long time in those compact negotiation meetings. And it was all white men around the table representing tribes. But at my last compact negotiation in 2015, there were Native women and Native men sitting around the table representing their tribal clients, which has been a huge change in the dynamic of representation in New Mexico, at least from what I've seen. So it's happened. The growth is happening not only with women in these positions and in Native men. So education and the Indian law program is definitely paying off at UNM for law. And I've seen women step up in the ranks over time, but it's still, as in America and the world, it's tough to be a woman in the workplace and in the positions that we're in my opinion. I feel like I've had to work 5 to 10 times harder as a woman to get where I am than my male counterparts. I have 4 degrees. I'm studying for my 5th degree right now, and I'm always continuing to learn and to make myself better, because in my mind, my mentality is you always have to be better as a woman to be able to get in these positions of high positions in any corporation or organization. So there's still a lot of work to do. I hear the young women out there still having, struggling, and I like to mentor and let them know what my story was growing up in the ranks over 22 years in Indian gaming and in the industry. So a lot of experience in the 22 years in how I've had to put myself out there and be a leader in Indian country. And it's not easy, but the motivation toward leadership for me is our community and the values that we hold and want to do better for our community and get those essential government services paid for our communities, so we have a better quality of life. So that's a little background, Victor, of me and where I'm at right now.
But in your role in leadership, do you still get these young Native women that say, listen, can you show me which door I should walk through, or which career path I should walk down and stuff like that? What do you do when a young woman comes up to you and says that? And what if they're not from your tribe,
Any young woman that comes up to me and asks for any advice, I'm there to listen and to offer the best advice I possibly can. And no matter what direction they want to go in their career, whether it's, gaming or law or social work or the medical field, it's important to have young women that are motivated and that have that support and know that they have that support moving forward in whatever endeavors they choose to do in their future. So and that advice is what are your values, do what you love, contribute to your community and to society, and go to bed every night knowing that you can live with yourself with the great work that you're doing for yourself and your family and your community. So I stay in contact. I have a few young ladies that I stay in contact with. If they ever need advice, I'm there just to help them through and get them over some humps sometimes, or hear their success stories. And so it's important to be a mentor to our younger to-be leadership that are coming up through the ranks in Indian country.
Once I put a session together, and it was Sheila on a session and 4 other men, and somebody pointed out, they go, there's 1 woman and 4 men on this session. I looked at it and I was like, yeah, we're gonna need more men, because this was like, it was unfair for these men that they had to sit up there with Sheila. So I think they needed to, like, I just had to do open mic to defend these guys because they looked really bad up there. But my point is, like, when you have like yourself and Sheila as role models, you know what I mean? It's important as leadership that like you said, you walk the walk and you talk the talk and you live it. And I think what's unique to Indian country is that our role models are so accessible. You know what I mean? I think in the dominant culture, your role models are on television and they're on magazines and they're on, but in Indian country, we have access to our leaders. You know what I mean? We have access to, and part of it is about being available. Now, what are the challenges that we're facing? What are our roadblocks in creating progress? What do we have to do? Do we have to create more mentorship programs? Do we have to have, I see a lot of women organizations out there. I know there's women in gaming, there's women near gaming, there's women around gaming. There's all these organizations, women around gaming who are empowered. But is it more organizations? I mean, what do we need? And as I think, obviously my mind wanders. I mean, this is really part of a male dominant culture that's just really, keeping it for themselves. Is that what we're dealing with?
I think, honestly, Victor, we talked about this again too in Vegas, is no disrespect to our friends who have gotten like Hall of Fame, right? Hall of Fame in gaming. They're all, for the vast majority of them, older white guys. And they did great. Don't get me wrong. I love Canute. I love those guys. They have done a lot in the world of gaming. But so have women. There are a lot of women up there, even if it's a Jane Jenkins, and Holly, who did so much during, the crafting, and Kim Teehee, who has done a lot of work in the crafting of IGRA. I mean, those women just sort of like, go unnoticed. And I think that that's hard. And we tend to place more value in mentorship programs. And I think everybody says, well, we have to have a mentorship program. Well, those are great and we should have them, but we place less value on the things that Max was talking about having women. You don't have to have a standard mentorship program in order to be a mentor. You just have to pick up the phone, answer an email, sit down and have a cup of coffee when you're at a conference with someone who wants to chat, and check in on each other. Indian country is full of moms and grandmas and aunties and sisters, and those are the people you need to talk to find out, one, celebrate your successes, but also just to vent sometimes. So, instead of placing all the value on mentorship programs in our developments, we ought to celebrate the ones that we already have that have been around forever.
Max, what do you think? And you know what, I have to tell you, and as somebody who produced this conference, this is where the rubber meets the road for me. So you guys are, helping me too. I try to always make sure I have women on all my sessions. And sometimes it's not possible when you're dealing with the leadership one, and you can't get a great woman tribal leader and they're not available and stuff like that. And so in Indian country, I see a really honest attempt, but I sometimes feel that we have a tendency to say, okay, let's do a mentorship program, and it's like, okay, that problem's taken care of. Let's move on. You know what I mean? Max, what do you think?
Well, I agree with Sheila. It's more than a mentorship program. It's community, and it's our openness as leaders to work with the younger generation, and getting some. We're so busy, but allowing us some time to give back even more to the younger generation, and that are coming up in leadership, because they will be our leaders, as they all say, right? We all grow up, and a lot of those folks become leaders in all different types of positions in Indian country. So that's important. I will say, though, formal training is important as well. And at the conference in GTUE, yourself and Chairman Stevens was listening to our panel, and that question came up. What do we do to promote leadership in Indian country? And Sheila says, stop talking about it and doing it. So that was my opportunity to put a respectful challenge out to Chairman Stevens, and challenge NIGA to have a women in leadership training class. And he agreed, and NIGA agreed to do that. And we're excited to have that. It's gonna, we have the NIGA regulatory certification class that's have something similar in women in leadership, and have our young leaders and our women take these courses that get them a certificate in leadership. I think that's important. There's a lot of leadership classes out there, but there's not one that's specifically geared to our culture and our needs in the gaming industry, and the issues that we deal with, the obstacles that we have. And so I think that would be a really good start, including everything else we're doing for NIGA to get on to get that organized, and let's get that started for our young potential leaders. And then in that, have a mentorship program from that comes out of that leadership program. So that's important. It's important to be there for the young up and coming women leaders, and it takes a lot of persistence. And it takes a lot of work. You can't give up. You have to, keep. I mean, it's easy to give up, but you never get anywhere when you do. And so it's important to continue to work your way through all those hard issues that are out there, and educating as a young leader. Continue to educate yourself, whether it's training classes or formal education, or getting that education another way. It's important for these young women in leadership to continue to work through. When it comes to leadership and women, at least as a Pueblo woman in New Mexico, Pueblo clients and Apache clients in New Mexico is, I was always behind the scenes as the attorney, we're the advisors. And it was always coming up with these ideas to get in front of tribal leadership, and they make the ultimate decision. But as a Pueblo woman, I think we have a tendency, maybe just as Native women, we have a tendency to stand back and create and have all this intelligent information, but to let somebody else lead the forefront on that issue. So I think it's going to take some learning from us as women, Native women as well, to step out of that boundary and find ourselves outside of that boundary and become that leader that we need to be. So there's some interesting dynamics that go on in Indian country, and let's just call it what it is, with men and women and leadership, and those things are evolving, and it's getting better, but there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Sheila,
go ahead.
Sheila, you were out at G2E, and Maxine, you said you were there. I mean, I don't know if you guys got to the keynote with the 3 CEOs, and they were interviewed by Contessa Brewer from CNBC. And she was really good. She asked them all straight up how many women they have working for them at senior leadership and how many minorities. And between the 3 of them, it was single digits. and you could kind of tell they were, you know, a little embarrassed about it, you know, and it's tough. And she even brought up issues of maternity leave and things of that nature. And it's the same thing what you were pointing out, Sheila, that, you know, the stereotypical CEO is up there trying to defend, you know, why they don't have more women and minorities. I really think, so you can only imagine what it's like, and you're living it, you know, Native American women trying to break into the senior ranks there. Where does that actually start, Sheila? We got to get, you know, obviously you guys in more of the rooms with these CEOs, but there's somewhere along the line where careers diverge. And I think that's what Contessa Brewer was getting at. Somewhere, whether it's family life or maternity, somewhere it branches off and then it becomes all old white men again. and you just don't see the women representation in gaming. And it's definitely something we've got to start preparing the kids more for in universities to get them on the path to take one of these jobs.
You know, Jason, you hit it right on the head. I mean, there is a place where it diverges. I mean, it's for women, not for men.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's look at it. I mean, there is a good reason why I'm not married and don't have kids. The path, you know, the path
Right.
goes whoosh, and you have to decide which one you're going to take. I honestly don't think I would be here or be here much later than I am now, which would be sad because I've been around for so long. But think about it. If I had been married, if I had kids, if I had taken maternity leave, all the things that would prohibit me from traveling as much. I mean, guys don't have it as hard because, Jason, you've got a wife and kids, and you can go travel, and you know as well as I do, and Victor as well. You know, we've got when I was working at NIGA, you know, there are sometimes you hit the road on a moment's notice. When you have kids, you just can't do that. So, and I think that is a natural inclination, especially for women in the workplaces. You have to choose. And, you know, I'm one of those people who think you don't have to, but I had to, you know, so, but there are people who have made it work fantastic. I mean, look at Val. Val, you know, raised a wonderful son, and she was in the workplace the whole time. So, you know, strong family, you have to have strong family behind you. So it becomes like it takes a village, you know, to do that. So I think that if you don't have the village behind you, you do have to make those choices, and it's hard. And I don't believe that we treat women as fairly in the workplace in terms of maternity leave and having to stay at home, or reasons to not travel as much as you might need to for your job. And if nothing has taught us if this COVID thing hasn't taught us anything, is that we can work, and we can work from home. You know, we've all worked from home. Nothing has fallen apart. We need to recognize the pluses, the minuses, and recognize that women do bring so much more to the table. You know, Max is right. We tend to sit back and sort of like, here's great ideas for you. And then they get done, and then it's up to us to implement them later and do all that stuff. But, you know, just being at the table now is so much more important because it skips a whole big step. And I think, you know, if, you know, NIGA taking the lead on developing this is gonna mean a lot for our young people.
You know, it sounds like it's really a foundational issue too. You know what I mean? It's just you know, it's something that training really can't solve. You know what I mean? Obviously having training, having mentorship, and having that's important. But we're talking about support. We're talking about family. We're talking about something more deeper and more profound. I think we as Native Americans, you know, we do have our tribes. Now, I'm very fortunate that I live near my reservation. You know, I interact with my res on a daily basis. I have that contact, and a lot of people don't live next to the reservations, and they don't have that type of support, you know? So I think, you know, I think that's really important. I think the foundational issue here really is about childcare and the importance of childcare and affordable childcare. You know what I mean? How many times I've read articles about it, and as someone who's fortunate enough, you know, to send my child to private school, you know, I know how much it costs and stuff like that. But I just imagine for other people, it's so difficult when I see the prices of what it takes. You know, I live near my school, so I get to pick my kid up. He doesn't have to stay after school program and stuff, but it's not necessarily a choice that you have to make when you're a working mother, you know, in this industry. And I think if anything, it's incumbent upon us in the industry, and I'm talking about men here, that we are aware of these issues and the importance of them too, because childcare issues affect all of us, you know. So I think this is an issue that I'd really like to dig into deeper, and give it a lot of thought too, because I think this is something maybe we can change, maybe we can make a difference. I don't know. I'm insane when it comes to this. I think I can change the world, you know, just because I'm Native American and we have, you know what I mean? So,
I mean,
but,
Maxine,
yeah,
Maxine,
ahead,
is it any easier at a tribe for a woman trying to come up, or at a tribal enterprise?
Well, I'll give you an example. At age, my second cousin, who was my niece, her mother passed away at age 11. My niece Taylor, and I raised her since she was 11 years old when her mom passed away from a horrific car accident. And when she came to live with me at 11, I had no children, but I had a close relationship with her. So I take her in, and I'm working at the Pueblo of Tesuque at that time. So I'm traveling 60 miles every day to get to my job site at Tesuque. But I think in Indian country, I think it's more understanding because of our outlook as Native communities of community. So when I needed to rush down to get her from after she broke her finger playing basketball, you know, I was able to do those kind of things from work. And so I think there's more understanding in Indian country because of who we are as a community. And it takes a village, and the community knows, and leadership knows in Indian country that it takes a village. So I think in the non-Indian corporate world, I think it's much harder out there, and much more less understanding, I should say, of family dynamics. It's about the bottom line, and that's it. But so I would say yes, I think Indian country is more open to how we as women, and as just Indian country, men and women, our families come first, and that's very important to our Indian communities.
Yeah, I do see more children at Native American events than I do at commercial gaming events too. I think that's part of it too.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know if that's bad or good. Go ahead, Sheila. I apologize for cutting you off.
No, I was just going to say that, family first is something that we say all the time, men or women. If something's happening, no matter how busy it is, it's like people pick up the slack for you, and that's Indian country. Community around you will pick up the slack for you if you need it at times. So, that's a big thing. And Victor, the reason that we have a lot of kids around during our events, especially gaming events, is because they're very comforting. When you're stressed out, holding that baby is a very comforting feeling.
Listen, I've brought my my son, and my wife and I foster, and we bring in our foster kids to some of these conferences too. So, I think, and not feeling like they're out of place. You know what I mean? It's like you come and they're welcome, and I think that's important. I'd like to get to something that I feel is a very important part of this conversation, is like, what should be in this leadership in women in leadership gaming session. Now, I walked in during the session right when you had Chairman Stevens up against the wall, literally. And what was funny is that I had just come in for talking to Deanna Jackson about training and creating new content and doing stuff like that. So when I walked in, it was perfect timing. That's why you saw me I ran up to him, and I was like, "Oh, just say yes, just say yes." Yeah. And so you guys let your foot off his throat, and he was able to eke out a yes. And but it's something we're very serious. I mean, what can we do in this leadership class? What do we need? What do we need to do to make it an effective resource?
Well, I'll start. There's a lot of curriculum out there that I think would work, and then we would hybrid it into Indian community. There's a lot of great stuff out there on leadership, and there's a lot of great stuff on this new stuff called emotional intelligence, soft skills versus hard skills. And I just think there's a curriculum that we can put together in my mind. I envision it as a 3-course, 8-hour course over time for women in leadership, and we put this curriculum together and just get the best of the best curriculum that's out there and make this work with a native Indian country, Indian gaming twist. So I think it's possible, and I look forward to being on the committee to help develop that curriculum.
Sheila, what do you think?
You know what? I agree with Max. There's, I've been to a lot of women events, and they tend to focus on your well-being, which is important, your well-being, but not on emotional intelligence, not on technical training, not on, giving yourself the permission to be out front and, giving people some good tools to use when you're at the table with all the men. There's got to be a balance between that part and your emotional well-being, because sometimes I think women tend to take a lot more stress and a lot more things on their shoulders to make things easier, not just for everybody, their coworkers, their family, their everything, and they tend to put themselves last, which is, it's normal. You said it right, Victor, is that this is something that is almost cultural, and it's something that we've been in our, in the way we were raised. I mean, the older you are, the more you were taught to be a wife, not someone who was in the workforce. You were taught to serve your husband first, your family first. So, as the younger people come through, that's not something that's taught as much. But I can tell you that my dad never served himself a day in his life when my mom was alive. She always served him. So I was like, I asked him if his legs were broken, but when he asked for seconds, so, but it's just like one of those, that's the way she was raised. And, and as hard as she tried to raise me like that. And I bucked a little bit, but we have to understand that, a lot of this comes from the way you were raised. And so, there's a lot of things that we have to sort of grow out of.
Right.
And I think we're doing that.
I've noticed recently there's been a couple announcements of Native American CEOs at casinos, and I believe there's been a couple Native American women announced recently. So, you're starting to see this progress, and I think especially in Indian country, it's just, I know within my tribe we have mentorship programs, and one of the sessions that we did at NIGA annuals, we talked about some of these mentorship programs and how sharing this information and how other tribes can, teach our young people to bring them up through the industry, and then also allow them to go to other reservations and other businesses to gain experiences and stuff like that. So I think definitely within your tribe, getting your tribe to make sure they have these mentorship programs. And I feel that a lot of tribes do have them, but again, I don't know every single tribe in the country. Now, one of the things that I notice as a producer of conferences, when I try to create women content, it's always interesting for me. One of the things that I notice is like, well, if you notice, we don't do a women in gaming track, and the reason why I decided not to do this is that if you do that, it gives people an opportunity to avoid it. You know what I mean? And to me, it kind of compartmentalizes it, and so what I like to do is I like to put the session, the empowerment sessions, in the middle of all the other ones, because once we did that, we had a women in gaming sessions, and it ended up being like at the far end of a hallway, and you had to go all the way over here to have the women's stuff, and it feels like you were just taking the women's stuff and compartmentalizing it away. And so I feel it's very important that we don't allow ourselves to do that. You know what I mean? If I have a session that is all women, I don't highlight that. I don't want to make it an oddity. I wanted to make it normal. I want to normalize it. You know what I mean? And Sheila, you know that. You know how I work like that. That it's always been very, and if I have an all women session, I don't highlight it. I don't call attention to it, because that's just making it an oddity. You know what I mean? So you want to normalize it and say, of course, we do all women's session all the time, you know, and I try to get as many women's sessions as possible. But do you guys find that problem? Is that an issue, or is that just in my mind, you know, that we have a tendency to like ghettoize the stuff and, you know, put it out and say, okay, I did my women's stuff, here it is, and let's just, you know, am I wrong?
No, I like that idea. I think we have to weave ourselves into all the issues. It reminds me of law school. I was getting a lot of pressure at University of New Mexico to be in the Indian law program, and I chose not to. I was getting pressure from my law professors and my fellow law student colleagues. And the reason why I didn't want to be in the Indian law program is because I wanted to get a variety of subject areas. And I took 2 Indian law courses, Indian law and Indian taxation. The rest was contracts, federal jurisdiction, you know, all these mainstream classes, so that I could learn the white man's world of doing law, and then I could apply it and knew the other side. So I think the same way in this context is that we need to be treated equal. We need to be in there weaving throughout the entire conference and being in all those different panels with all those different issues. I think that's important for us to do. We learn more that way, and others learn more from us that way. And we're not compartmentalized into this last day of the conference thing hidden away someplace.
Right. And I think I think that's important. And, you know, it reminds me of a funny story. You know, I went to Standing Rock, and I'm not going to name any names, but what was funny is that a certain tribe got upset because they were doing, you know, let's do women and children first. And to them, it's like the men ate first, and that was part of their culture. And they got upset that, you know, other people were eating before them. And I guess that's part of how deeply ingrained it is. You know what I mean? Is we talk about a matriarchal culture, and there are tribes, you know, and in our tribe, in a lot of tribes, but, you know, when the rubber meets the road, I think that's where the reality of the dominant culture is, the man macho, you know what I mean? And I think it's very incumbent upon us to make sure that we are affecting change and being the change we want to see, without sounding like a fortune cookie, but that we are really being the change we want to see, you know? And so in my role as a conference, what the hell I do? A conference coordinator, whatever I do, you know, it's important, like I said, that these women issues are weaved in there, and not so people they can't avoid them, you know what I mean? And they can't, you know, and it was funny when I realized what I was doing. And, you know, I'll tell you another thing that I did, and I felt like such an idiot, was they're like, oh, you have to do a women in gaming sessions, and I did them all, and I put nothing but women on there, and there was no men whatsoever. And at the end of it, I was just like, you know, you're such a moron. You know what I mean? And because it really isn't about women in gaming, it's really about people in gaming and women in the industry. And, you know, so again, it was me with my little pea brain, you know, compartmentalizing it and stuff. But, you know, I've progressed, I'm learning, you know, I've just learned to walk upright. So, you know, give me a break. But, you know, these are the biases that I've seen in myself that I've tried to correct, you know what I mean? Usually after the fact, by the way. You know,
you're very good, Victor, at making sure there are women in all the panels, which is why, you know, sometimes Val and I get one, just us and, you know, 3 or 4 other guys, you know, 4 guys. And poor Jason gets a regional panel with all women and just him. So
well, there's so many brilliant women in Indian country, and, you know, it's never a problem for me for finding smart women on my sessions. It's hard for me to find smart women that are available. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know,
I was just about to say that, Victor, you know, because you've done this enough, and I've been here long enough when we do these invites. Yeah, it's always as you pointed out, Sheila, the woman has to juggle stuff.
Yeah.
And the man, you know, on a whim, oh yeah, pencil me in, you know, and you know, I don't know how that dynamic is ever going to change. It's interesting because you know, at that same panel at G2E, you know, the one thing you never hear a female CEO or a female woman in power who's stepping down or retiring. And that's true. I thought about it, and I thought about it since. I've never, ever heard one say, well, yeah, it's time to go spend more time with my family now. Yeah, you hear, everybody. The head coach at LSU just said it last week when he's stepping down at the end of the season. He's 60 years old, divorced, and now he said, "I'm going to go spend more time with my children." I'm like, I bet his kids are 20. They don't care about you anymore. I mean, it's just, it's
Wow.
so. When men say that, they've got to stop that. It's just such, why don't you just admit you ignored your family for, however long? I mean, it's the craziest thing. And they all say it now, like it's some kind of
Wow.
valorous thing. Like, oh, I just, I can't run this great corporation anymore because I got to spend time with my family.
Wow. Wow. And he brings a great point. And,
Yeah, it was a great point.
True. That's a great point, Jason.
I've been trying to think since then, if I ever heard a female who was stepping down or retiring, say, "Oh, I'm going to go spend more time with my family." Wow. So.
Wow. Well, you know what? I think, again, that has to do with society and our expectations on the roles of men and women. You know what I mean? And, the man sacrificed his career to do the job and put the table. And now I'm going to bring back and, be welcomed like a hero. You know what I mean? With a pot roast. That's funny, Jason.
Yeah.
That's very funny. So somebody asked me, what is the estimated time frame when these training leadership classes will be started? Well, if you learn anything about this session, we're just talking about it. It's not going to happen. No, actually, that's a joke. We're actually, I'm talking to Deanna, and Maxine has been kind enough to help us, and Stephanie, and other women that were on. Who else was on that? Oh, Erica Pinto, Chairman Pinto. But we plan on reaching out and actually make this. I think it's important that we create something of substance and something that really feels that people are doing something in their lives other than sitting around watching another Zoom interview webcast or something like that. You know what I mean? Sorry, Jason.
Let's hope they feel that way about the White House Zoom meeting with tribal leaders.
Well, Jason, we actually probably next week we're going to be talking about NIGA mid-year, and what Jason's talking about. We just got an announcement this year that at the White House is doing their leadership meeting on the same day that NIGA mid-year is starting. So we're going to have to do something to outshine the White House. So I don't know what that is. Actually, like I said, I don't think it's going to be a problem for us. I think because what we're doing, the content we're doing is so regional and so parochial that I don't think it's going to be a real issue. So anyhow, but back to the question, this we're just in the beginning of the process. We wanted to have this conversation because we wanted people to know what we're doing. And we also want to know about your ideas and what you think we should be doing. But like Maxine said, there is the curriculum's out there, but I think it's important that we make sure that it's tailored, that it's tailored to Native Americans and it's tailored to people in our industry, so I think that's very, very important. But now I have some more questions here. I apologize and get back over here. Okay. So Maxine, I have a question. So what advice would you give a younger self in preparing for a career in gaming? What would you have done different?
I don't think I would have done anything different. I think, I was persistent. I worked hard. I got my education. I failed a lot and I picked myself back up and learned. It's important as a younger person to get the training that you need to get to where you want to be. That's important. It was just a lot of hard work and persistence is what it took. And so I don't know if I would do it any different. My life's journey is my life's journey, and I'm where I'm at. And I was motivated to be here. I'll tell you a story. When I went to go work for Kate Stetson Law Offices, Kevin Gober had just left. So it was Gober, Stetson, Williams. And so in law school, I grew up watching Kevin negotiate the compacts, and he was my mentor from afar. But somebody I looked up from afar, and I said, I want to be like Kevin. I want to do this Indian gaming stuff, and be a factor in our communities so that we can make money to give to our tribe for central government services. And so I used him, even though he doesn't know till this day, as who I looked up to go in that direction. So it's just it's a lot of hard work, but not being afraid to fail and picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and keep going. And I think it takes a lot of collaboration and tactic as well. You can't be a bulldozer. I think women get a really bad rep if you're really persistent and strong, and you offend people. And so it does take some I guess charisma and some articulation and how you work through the ranks to get to where you're at. You can't just bulldoze through and be aggressive. It's being assertive, and I think that's the key, is assertiveness, not aggressiveness, and to know your stuff. Be prepared.
I agree. I think the first time that I met my cousin Holly, who's married to my cousin Mark, she was sent over to beat me up. They knew that she was tough. Seriously, she came over to rough me up, and she was hard. I saw her coming, man. It was like one of those prison movies, and they're coming across the yard at you. You know you're gonna get shanked. I ran, because I knew, there's a lot of strong women in this industry, and I think especially for Indian country, there's a lot of examples. And Max, and by the way, when I went in your session and I heard you speak, and I heard you spoke with authority and power, and I was just like, I need to know that woman, and I was just so impressed with your presence and the dynamics that you spoke with. And it was, that's leadership, you know what I mean? That's setting the example. And I hope other women that were in that room were as inspired by you as I have been. But in your role in Laguna, what can you do to help the next generation? What do you do to help the next generation?
Well, I have in my role as CEO, I do have a management capacity plan at Laguna, where we're bringing young Laguna folks, men and women, up the ranks. Not only that, it's our non-Indian folks. It's to get the best talent out there. But, I'm really taking a close eye at our Native women to make sure I can mentor them more. So we have a management capacity plan that we're putting folks in, and we do have folks that have reached those goals, not quite the GM yet, but the assistant GM and pretty close to top executive positions. And it just takes time, right? I think in Indian country, sometimes we believe that since we got our degree, we should be the CEO instantly because we have a degree. It's a combination between education and experience, and a lot of experience, a lot of ups and downs and learning and just experience in the industry that gets you to where you're at over time. And it doesn't happen overnight. And a lot of our young folks these days don't understand that. I didn't at first either. But I remember when I went back to be in-house counsel for my pueblo, my governor, Roland Johnson, he's now have passed. He said, you go out into Indian country, you go learn, then you come back to me. And then, we know you're going to be ready because you have all those experiences. I was very hurt by that. And, but I did it, for 20 years. I didn't go back to the Pueblo of Laguna and work for them directly. I was out there working in Indian country for other tribes and put my blood, sweat, and tears into that. So it's important that as young leadership, that it's not expected just because you're a tribal member, just because you have your degree, that you're going to get that position. It takes time, it takes work, it takes experiences, it takes looking at all those different things that come your way in your industry that help you be a better leader in time and get you to those positions. I had the opportunity as well, Victor, at G2E to sit down with the Paskiyaki tribe, the lieutenant governor and their development person over there, and 6 women, tribal leaders, tribal members that are in their mentorship program for the casino, and just sat around and we talked about our stories and where they are. This is part of that mentorship, right? Where if somebody reaches out to you, you go and you have that, you spend that time with those ladies and tell them your story and listen to them and where they want to be. So I know that Paskiyaki has a great mentorship program out there, and they have all these women in these positions that are looking to get into leadership positions. So that's out there in Indian country. I hear there's a lot of programs out there, and that's the combination between formal training and management capacity plans and everything else we're doing will elevate us to where we need to be in time.
Well, you're absolutely right, and especially now that you're in this position, you have that opportunity to affect change, and I think it's important. as you're doing, and as a Native American woman, and as a tribal member, that, you know, we create these career paths not only for our people, but for our employees and the people, our allies and our friends who, you know, we don't do this alone, you know, and we don't exist in a vacuum. You know, Robin Villarreal had a question, a comment in here. She said, "Thank you for hosting this subject. I am new to the C-suite and understanding that pride is different than boasting about your accomplishment. Sheila gave me this advice most recently." And, you know, Sheila, that's really profound, you know, and I say this because I'm one of those people, when I see an assertive person, I'm impressed by them. So I think, you know, sometimes we're taught to be, you know, not stand up or not, you know, draw attention to ourselves, you know, and some of us is part of our culture, you know what I mean? So for some people, it's contrary to their nature to stand up. But, you know, you're one of those people, Sheila, that you really have been a shining light in this industry for very long. And before this, some people may or may not know, but you used to work for the National Gaming Association. When I met you, you worked for the National Gaming Association. So you've been a leader for a very long, you've not just a leader, but an example, and the kind of leader that, you know, when people, you're desired, you're wanted for your intellect, for your brain, because we know Sheila's a fighter and she's going to go to the match for you, you know. So, you know, in your role, and you have a unique position because you're the head of a trade group. So what are you doing, Sheila? Sorry to put you on the spot. So Sheila, what are you doing to help women? Sorry, man, I didn't want to set you up like that. Yeah, but what, you know, how are you, you know, what did you do?
What for other women?
Well, like you know, yeah, it could be an example, and you know, the Oklahoma Indian Gaming Association, which is, you know, a great trade group with a great show and a great market, you know.
Well, a lot of it is just getting, you know, Robin was right, sitting down and talking to women about that difference. You know, we are taught not to be prideful. We're not to boast. But there's nothing wrong with telling people your accomplishments, because you work for that. Those are your strengths. Those are the things that you accomplished on your own. It's different to say, I was born into something, I did this. And I told her, I said, you notice that men boast quite often about all sorts of things. You know, women don't do that very well. But we need to start trying. And, you know, I am very lucky to be working in Oklahoma. I'll tell you, you know, example of women in gaming and in C-suites, you have to look at the Choctaw Nation. Janie Dillard, if you find a man in her upper management group, good luck. You know, there are a few, but it is primarily women, and women that have come up through the ranks of the Choctaw Nation. And they are Choctaw, you know, tribal members, the vast majority of them. So they have built this powerhouse of a management team that, you know, good luck getting anything by them, because they are number one, they are smart. They've had the experience. They started with the bingo hall, and they just opened up, you know, they just doubled the size of their casino with another tower that opened up just a few months ago. So, you know, that team is powerful. They've got a ton of ways that, you know, women in Choctaw and in their casino can come up through the ranks through their formal and informal mentorship programs. And I think that until we get to the point where we have more Maxes, more Janies, you know, that we are going to be the, you know, unfortunately, as Jason said, those guys on the stage where a woman's asking, what do you do for women? And three men go, don't know. Because, you know, until that changes, until we have more women in those C-suites, until we have more women CEOs and in charge of their economic development plans, we are going to have to go through those men to get to understand and to get us up into those ranks.
Yeah, well, Sheila, you've always been an example. And I think, you know, if there's a young woman out there that is looking for a role model and someone to follow, I think you couldn't do any better than follow Sheila Moraga. I'm very proud to call her my friend. And when she walks in a room, people know it. You know what I mean? We talk about boasting and intent, and you know, some people just walk in the room and, you know, that's the real deal. And Sheila is definitely one of those people. So I'm very proud to call her my friend. And Maxine, I say the same thing for you. But you know what? Before we end this thing, I'd like to end with something that happened to me once. I was at a trade show and we were doing it, and we invited some people over from the UK. And this gentleman had done a lot of work in dealing with a lot of the Arab states and stuff like that, and working with them and working in charities. And he came and he was on the trade show floor, and he said, and he was surprised at all these Native American women in leadership roles and leadership and stuff like that. He's like, you have all these women in leadership. So he goes, what do you call them? And I said, we just call them leaders, you know? So it was never any, and I think that's just the way Indian country is. So if you're a young woman there, and if you're looking for those examples, you know, I think you really can't do better than Sheila and Max. And one of the questions is, you know, so we're going to be working on these training sessions. We're going to be working on this group. So please check in with us. My name is Victor Rocha, victor@pachanga.net. If you guys need to know, I'm here. But you know, we're going to continue on with this conversation. This isn't one and done. You know, we plan on keeping this session alive, this issue alive. And we want to thank you guys. Sheila, thank you very much for coming. Max, thank you so much. We ran a little late, or started a little late with little technical difficulties, but thank you everyone so much for being here and sticking around for us. Jason, what do you think, brother? This was a good show, huh?
Yeah, and someone asked about the timeline for implementing all this. I mean, it's clearly a 2022 initiative that we're going to be focusing on, and I think, you know, starting in January, you'll start to hear a lot about what we're going to roll out for next year.
Yep, and also, so again, Maxine, thank you so much for joining us. Sheila, I love you. You know that. You're always been an inspiration to me. And Jason, thank you very much. And to everyone that joined, we really appreciate it. We'll see you next week. We're going to be talking about NIGA mid-year and how you can help us cancel that tribal leadership session in Washington, D.C. So we're going to take the big push. All right, everyone. Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good to see you,
Thank you.
Max.
You
Good to see
too.
you,
Take
Jason.
care.
Bye, Victor.